Good morning. My name's Ryan Littlestone from forexflow.live. Another crazy week start today. What's going on in this time? Well, now we've got oil coming into the mix. You know, we've had the virus worries, increased cases in northern Italy shutting down virtually. And on top of that, we've got all this oil moving in now, where on Friday or last week we had the OPEC meeting where they were going to perhaps decide to increase production cuts. Russia played hardball, said they're not going to increase. And then over the weekend, we've had the Saudis coming out saying they're going to ramp up production at the end of the period, I think the end of March, when the deal runs out. And now they're not worried about prices either. So, you know, we've seen oil collapse 25, 30% in markets over between when it opened on Sunday. And that's now injected another dose of volatility into these already fragile markets, and we're seeing the effects kick on into FX markets and stock futures. So looking at the oil charts, I'm looking at Brent here really, and on the weekly chart we can obviously see the big red candles pointing down there as this extra oil move gets infused into all the risk moves that we're seeing already. So this is one thing that's going to spill over into things like central banks, because it's going to have obviously a negative inflationary pressure depending on how long it lasts. You know, these oil moves could drop further. The market's going to start going potty about it. Where can oil bottom out? So from a trading perspective, it's adding another dimension really to what we're seeing already, and we've got to factor that in. We're seeing markets move, you know, in 10, 15, 30, 40 pip clips at the moment. You know, we're sitting watching cable and it's trading 131.80. Next minute it's trading 131.40. So generally, when we look at markets, what we need to do is stretch our mindset out. Really, it's no good trading short term at the moment. We need to stay safe. So, you know, if we're looking at this oil chart here, this weekly oil chart, what you want to look at on the charts now is for the wider levels, the bigger ranges over the higher time frames, because that's where possibly you're going to start seeing the charts take effect. Because really in the short term, the techs are pretty useless and should largely be ignored. So using oil as a proxy, what could happen? Well, we could see it drop all the way down to sort of the 1990 lows, anywhere sort of down towards $10. If we get down to those sort of levels, that's where you want to start looking for a longer term trade, perhaps. Look at oil, even look at oil stocks, you know, in some of the big companies, the big petroleum companies like BP. If their price gets hammered, you know, based on oil price, based on stock market falls, then perhaps you want to start looking at maybe taking some of your trading account money, stretching it out into stocks, you know, having a little wide berth there, building up a little portfolio of all these big companies that maybe have lost value just in the panic selling. Because that's where you want to be looking now. Trying to trade this short term is really folly. It's very dangerous. And as retail traders, this is not the sort of volatility that's good for us. So what we have to do is change up how we trade and say, look for these longer term trades, perhaps, you know, getting a portfolio in stocks, picking up little bits and pieces, funneling a bit of money away, something that you can sit on for a good period of time. And that's potentially going to bring you the better returns over the longer term than it is trying to pick pips in the shorter term. So just generally looking at the markets, we've seen currencies affected. Obviously, when we're looking at oil, we've got currencies like the Canadian dollar, which is obviously sold off big today, up above 137. We've got the Mexican peso, another oil currency, and down to the NOK. You know, these are all currencies that get affected by this big oil market, and that's on top of everything else going on. Things like dollar yen need to be watched, because we're getting into that zone where the Japanese Ministry of Finance and the Bank of Japan might start getting hot too and start talking about intervention. So lots to go on, lots to look forward to. My main piece of advice is stay safe and try and trade as well as possible, and I wish you luck this week.